Welcome to Shooting Straight with A1F.com. I'm Frank Miniter, the editor-in-chief of the NRA's magazine, America's First Freedom. Today we have the great pleasure of speaking with Tom King. Tom is the president of the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, and he's an NRA board member. Now, Tom, we talked about this. Two plaintiffs, both members of the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, came to you, and they said a local licensing official, in this case a judge, had denied them their right to carry for self-defense outside of their homes. And they said, what can we do about it? He said, let me call the NRA. And you did, and NRA's legal department and the public affairs department began to help through this fight, but you were also big and instrumental in it as it went from court to court and finally was accepted by the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, I think, looking at this whole case and meeting one of your plaintiffs and now seeing this win, New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruen, that if Hollywood are honest at all, this should be a movie because this is just average, normal people standing up against big government for their individual rights and winning. I mean, talk about a Mr. Smith goes to Washington kind of case. But tell me, these two plaintiffs, have they now, like in New York, you have to apply for your rights. So have they applied for their rights? I mean, are they now waiting?
They are waiting. Okay, the raft of laws that Governor Hochul instituted or pushed through the legislature to circumvent the Supreme Court ruling has thrown everything into the hopper again, and it appears that we will be going to court again, and it appears that a couple of the plaintiffs are going to be the same guys. Okay, and but it's going to be a little more. It's going to be a little difficult this time and a little easier because of the Supreme Court decision.
Well, I hope so. I mean, I'm a New Yorker with a pistol permit, and
I'm sorry.
And just walking down the street, if you walk into a park, you've broken the law, and it's a potential felony where you can lose your rights for life if you're convicted. If there's a protest, and especially they call out civil liberties protests, you can't carry. So if you're walking along and you happen to walk into a protest, there's just so many places, public transit, so on, that they've made in this list, this exhaustive list of places you really can't carry. This seems like they were thumbing their nose back at the Supreme Court.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the response that Governor Hochul made to someone who asked that question was, the exact question was, well, where can somebody carry concealed? And her response was, well, I think there's a street or two that they could still carry on.
Wow. A street or two. Yeah, in the decision, Justice Thomas literally says you can't declare the whole island of Manhattan a sensitive place and therefore declare it off limits to this important constitutional right. But they did declare Times Square off limits, the subway system, the buses, on and on. Just about every government building that I saw that was listed was off limits. As I said, sidewalks, if there's anything going on at all. I don't feel safe now. I feel less safe now carrying into state than I did before the Bruen decision.
Well, I agree. I think that's a very valid point because now there are two threats from the bad guys and from the uber bad guys.
It's the government that scares me. Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what I meant. And so I think that's probably the truth, and I do think that. I think this is going to be resolved in courts, and I think that Kathy Hochul is going to get her wrist slapped.
Well, I hope she loses this fall. I hope that's what happens.
Yeah, me too.
But we need someone in there. I mean, even in New York, imagine that, a freedom-loving person in the governor's mansion. That would be just incredible. But
yeah.
Let's talk about Bruen for a second. This decision, written by Justice Thomas, is striking. It's a beautifully written piece of prose. It's really declarative writing that goes right after the topic. I mean, wow. I think of Justice Scalia when I see this thing from Thomas. How did you feel about this ruling?
Oh, when I read it, first off, I heard about what the decision was, okay, and I was just ecstatic, okay, and then I read it and I became happier and happier. The smile got bigger and bigger and bigger, and I thought to myself, I couldn't have asked for anything better than this. I mean, it was a great decision. It was very, very well written, and it was obviously someone who is a student of this Constitution, who's a believer in the Second Amendment, and who truly believes in people's rights. And I just don't think it could have gotten any better than this.
And the dissents from Justice Kavanaugh and so on, and Barrett, pointing out the flaws in the reasoning for the dissent that was opposed to our freedom in this case, taking them to task and saying, no, this is how this would actually have happened. What you're saying doesn't make sense. It was a lot of guts from these justices.
Oh, yeah, I agree. And, it reminds me of when the argument was made, when we had the argument way back in February, and the Attorney General, the Assistant Attorney General from New York State, made the comment that, she could understand how someone in the Adirondacks may want a pistol license, but New York City was too crowded. And Justice Roberts said, so you're telling me that the Adirondacks are more dangerous than the streets in New York City? When he said that, I thought, oh boy, here we go. And it was the case.
Now, I've spent a lot of time in the New York's Adirondacks, and you could just take your canoe out, leave it there overnight, not worry about a thing. Nothing's going to be touched. Very little crime up there. Was New York City? I've worked down there. I spent 8 years working in New York City. I've heard gunshots around me in New York City. People have tried to mug me in New York City. It's a totally different experience.
Oh, absolutely. I worked there for 4 or 5 years, and I actually saw somebody get pushed onto the subway tracks. Fortunately, there were enough people there who jumped into action and pulled the person out of the tracks and then got themselves out. But that doesn't happen anywhere else. I've never seen someone intentionally pushed in front of a car up here in New York State. It only happens in New York City.
No, especially now, things have gotten much rougher, much more dangerous in New York as they've gone. I mean, some of the policies that have made this stuff worse, the cashless bail, the letting prisoners out during the COVID, these woke DAs not prosecuting bad guys instead of they go after good guys instead. It just has made the whole problem worse and has made carrying just so much more important.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it also shows that we have to elect good officials. Lee Zeldin, who's running for governor, has promised that the first day after he's elected, he will remove the Manhattan district attorney from office for his failure to prosecute cases and let criminals back out on the streets. And I think that we need more people who would do something like that, who would stand up for the rights of the good guys rather than the rights of the bad guys.
Now, for all those non-New Yorkers out there, I think it's important to tell them, especially those who were in May issue states before this ruling, I'm wondering if you were hearing from other associations and so on, because some other states have already started to move, in California, for example, will they use, look at this New York list that they wrote. This is an exhaustive list, that was going to be litigated. It's an exhaustive list telling where we can't carry, where we don't have our freedom. Will they start to copy this? This is now the new conversation, is where's a sensitive place in America?
Well, I think that's already happening. I haven't read them myself, but I was told that there's a couple of other states who have essentially taken the laws that Governor Hochul pushed through and are trying to institute them in their state.
Wow, so this could actually grow in different places, and I would imagine it's going to take time to litigate. The court system, for all it can do wonderful things, but it's not fast.
No, that's right, and I think it is going to take some time. But I think there are many people who are working on this, okay, and who are going to push this through. And I do think that we're going to find an accelerated way to get this back into the higher courts.
Yeah, what I worry about here is that people, gun owners especially, people who vote for their freedom, are going to see this big Supreme Court win and say, all right, we've gotten there, it's done. When, okay, this is a very important ruling, it's a very big deal, and it's a very positive thing, but it's really put us into a new chapter, a new phase in the battle for our rights.
Oh, absolutely. I hope there aren't a lot of people that feel that way, although I'm sure there are going to be, that this is not the end. This is the beginning. We've had 40 years or 50 years. In New York, we had 100 years of the Sullivan Law. And this is the first step in getting our rights back. Okay, there's someone who's challenging the NFA laws in New York State now, and the short-barreled guns and semi-automatics, okay, that are going to submit a lawsuit on that, and I think that it's about time. The procedures that are set up for those things are no different, would be no different here than they are in the rest of the country, and you don't see any large-scale shootings or rampages of people with fully automatic firearms. I mean, it just doesn't happen. They're collector's items, which we can't own here in New York.
But that was an important part of this ruling that Justice Thomas brought it up, that in the 42 other states that had this freedom already. They already had shall issue, so people get permits as long as they weren't prohibited by law. You didn't see Wild West shootouts everywhere. The crime rates didn't go surging. It didn't affect things in that regard. The sky didn't fall. But they're telling us that Hochul here is telling us in New York and so on. It just didn't happen.
No, they're saying that what will happen is that we're going to return to the Wild West. And my question is, that's an insult to the West when we have the Wild East here, which is much more worse than anything that ever went on in the Wild West, quote unquote.
No, as a student of history, the Wild West wasn't how Hollywood portrays it. It's a lot of fun. I love Westerns, but it wasn't quite like that.
No, it wasn't, but most people base their history on what they've seen on the movie screen rather than reading what actually happened, and so that's all they have to believe in.
But people know crime is up. There are more gun owners than ever. I mean, just millions more new gun owners in the last couple of years. Every study I look at on the number of people with carry permits in the states where you still have to get them, been going up. And it isn't just in certain red areas or something. It's across the country this is happening. People get it. They have to stand up for their own freedom because where the cops might be minutes away, you have seconds.
That's right. That's exactly right. Police, the gun is available when the cops aren't, and that's not a knock on the cops. They have a job to do. They do it well, but they have a huge area to cover and they just can't respond.
So let me ask you, given this big win in Supreme Court, are you hopeful about our future?
Yeah, I'm kind of an optimistic person anyway. I'm always hopeful about it, but this makes me happy, and it makes me pretty sure that our future is going to be locked in, and we're going to be able to get a lot of the rights back that we lost. So
where can people go for the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association to find out what you guys are up to in this fight? Maybe they want to help?
They can go to our website, www.nysrpa.org, or they can friend us on Facebook, New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, and we post updates both there. If they want really instantaneous information, they go to our website and they can sign up for our alert list, and it's something that we don't sell to anybody, but it enables us to get emails out almost instantaneously to let people know what's going on. And that's the quickest way to get information in New York State.
Well, thank you, Tom. Thank you for fighting this good fight.
Oh, thank you. I couldn't have done it without the NRA. I mean, that's just the way it is. These things cost way more than people think they do. And an association like New York State Rifle and Pistol Association just doesn't have the money to bring something through to fruition. And if it wasn't for the NRA, this wouldn't have happened.
It wasn't for NRA members, right? Absolutely.
That's right.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, thank you. Take care, Frank.